Well, welcome to another episode of GraceLed Conversations. My name is Rob Russell, and excited to be joined by a friend, fellow pastor, Byron Brown. And thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
I know we have several things we want to talk about, and one of those things also being an upcoming event with the Remind Conference, which I'm sure you'll get to share more about here in a couple of minutes. But why don't you start off, let us know a little bit about you, your family, how long you've been on the North Shore, and what your ministry has been.
Yeah, so my name is Byron Brown. I'm married to my awesome wife, Liz. We've been married 27 years. I have 4 kids. I have one who's going to be a sophomore. She's transferring to Southeastern. I have another one that's leaving to go to Southern Miss. And then I have 2 other boys, will be 11th grade and 8th grade. So we've been in this area for 21 years this coming August. So that's how we got here. I became the pastor at First Baptist Lacombe at that time, now called Redemption Church. So we've been on the North Shore for quite some time. It's all my kids know. And so it's definitely home for us. I've been in Louisiana, though, for all those 27 years. I started out down in Grand Isle, Louisiana, and I was there for 3 years.
Wow.
That's definitely a different, not just location, it's a different world altogether. And then was in New Orleans for a few years and then came up to the North Shore.
Wow. So, 21 years on the North Shore, that's seen a lot of cultural shifts too. We've had some natural disasters in that time. We've had a few things that growing up here and then moving away for a season, coming back, like a lot of it's a very different place. So I've, as a church planner, I have only ever started churches. I applied to be the senior pastor of an established church once. And maybe they recognized the reason why I started churches and hadn't worked in the established church. Yeah. So somebody moving into an existing church, like if you can think back 21 years ago, what that was like coming into Lacombe, you had already been in Louisiana, but you'd been in some unique places too, between Grand Isle and New Orleans. Yeah. And just what was that period like coming into a church? Every church, you're kind of inheriting a situation too. Yeah. What was that initial time like for you?
Well, I surrendered ministry when I was 15 and began preaching, and I grew up in a very small rural church. And so the pastors in our area were very gracious. Probably I would not do the same thing, I guess, the way they did, just trusting a 15-year-old guy to come in the pulpit to preach. And so I got a lot of just experience as a young kid, but also developed a lot of bad habits in regards to just study, et cetera. Fast forward. So I carried some of those habits with me into the time that I came to Lacombe, and the church wasn't healthy at that moment. But prior to me coming to Lacombe, I had gone to New Orleans Seminary, which became my mentor, Dr. Jim Shaddix, and so my whole study and development of exposition just radically got changed. So when I got to Lacombe, I felt like I had good skills from the pulpit exposition in that aspect. But coming into Lacombe, an established church, it was a very unhealthy church. They had fired the previous pastor just due to different reasons. And so they had gone down to like 13 people. Wow. And so when I came, everybody shows up, for me preaching in quote unquote view of call.
Right.
There were some great loving, super people there, but because they had gone from a spot where they were very unhealthy, they were very willing. It says, we want to do whatever it takes to get our church healthy. Now, that was the general consensus, but there were some that wanted to kind of hang on, that had their power in certain things. So it took some time, So it was an unhealthy place then, and I knew it was going to be a long journey, but I always felt like God gave me a heart for revitalization. I didn't feel called to church planting. I knew guys that did and admired their work. I did not realize how hard revitalization was going to be, because I knew that going into where I was, it was going to have to be a revitalization effort, or the church was going to die.
Yeah. Well, and with that core group of 13, all bringing their past experience with the church there, and you starting fresh, I don't know. I feel like a lot of guys in that situation also, it's kind of lonely to start too. You were in New Orleans before that, I think. So what was community like for you getting started in the revitalization work?
Well, a few people that were there were very gracious and just welcomed us. So they made us feel like family. Both my family and my wife's family are not from here. So we're both from either North Alabama or North Georgia. So seeing family, having family we had to make this our family. So we had a choice. Either we're going to really love these people, commit to these people and have family and network of community here, or we are going to be very lonely. And so many of them were very gracious. And I say it was 13 that was there. We had a little bit more that we kind of, as we were just there in a very short amount of time. So they really welcomed us. They loved us well. And so we were very grateful for that, so that we didn't go in there and feel like that we were being isolated away and not being welcoming. So from the church standpoint, we felt like we were loved and we were embraced, and had just a couple of men in the church that really just identified with the vision that I felt like God gave us. So I felt like that from the very beginning, God was very gracious to us in that way. Now, as far as like knowing people, because I had still people from New Orleans, I had my mentor that I could lean on if there was times where I had questions. And then within our immediate city, there was a ministerial alliance that was in place at that time. Okay. And so basically the local pastors would get together. And
so it's like multiple denominations. Is that Protestant and Catholic, or was it just Protestant?
No, it was both and is what it was supposed to be.
Gotcha.
Supposed to be.
Okay.
And then, and so I went to a couple of those meetings, and so we had a couple of joint efforts, and it sounded good on the surface, but then where I realized it wasn't healthy is we had like a joint Christmas celebration. And so I'm like, hey, what can we do with showing the Old Testament text, New Testament text, and let's like really make sure the gospel is clear. And I want to say, hey, we don't want you to be preaching at this event. And I'm like, well, what are we doing? Well, we want to serve hot chocolate and be able to sing Christmas songs. I'm like, well, what is Christmas all about? So I realized the purpose of that group was not necessarily what needed to happen. But in our denomination of Baptists and our local association, at that time, actually, I built some good relationships, So our director of missions at that time, Dr. Lonnie Wascom, he's now deceased. He was good, did a great job of getting pastors together as far out as our association is spread. So I found a couple of guys that really I felt like we gelled with and have helped built and kept good relationships with some of those guys even to this day.
Now, I'm curious, like, because in planting, when I hear 13, 20 people, like you're thinking this is a core team that you're which is a great foundation. At the same time, you're probably having to raise some outside support to get things off the ground. I don't know what that's like on the revitalization side of things. Were you full time? Did you have another job? Did you have to raise support? Did you have other churches that were supporting the revitalization work? I guess I'm just ignorant on kind of that process for revitalization. What did that look like for you?
Well, I think that depends upon each church. I don't think there's a one plug and play example in regards to what it looks like. And so I was full time. They had a home that I lived in, but I made it very clear. I said, hey, in the future, I am going to buy my own home. I was the first pastor in their history that ever did that. Now, mind you, at that time, the church was 70-something years old, and I was the 25th pastor they've had. So there was not longevity that was there. So it was kind of very foreign to them. Like, well, every other pastor has stayed in our house. I'm like, well, I wanted them to understand I'm planning on planting roots here, like to make a difference. Right. So they had enough they could pay me full time. Now, I was married, did not have children at that time, understanding I came from a full-time salary in Grand Isle of $17,000. And so when I came here and the salary was a little bit more than that, it sounded like a lot of money to me. And so it was, God was gracious, and I wasn't necessarily looking for anything particular. So God was able to help us sustain us. And so I was able to work hard there at the ministry. And I was also starting PhD work. And so I was running hard both in ministry and in school at the same time.
Wow. Now, I do want to circle back because I caught you saying there's a lot of things you would have done differently. Or there's you brought in some bad habits with you into the pastorate as well, too. As you've grown in ministry yourself, like what are some things that you wish you either would have been more equipped with early on in pastoral ministry? Things that you would maybe encourage pastors, younger pastors, or guys just starting out now to really focus in on as they step into ministry or a new pastorate?
I think especially if a guy is going in for his very first time, oftentimes I think many of those guys think that they're going to be the hero and they're going to be the one that's going to fix it all. They got their bag of tricks, and within a couple months or a year, it's just going to be switching over. I think in regards to where we are in our society, there's a lot of larger kind of mega churches, and I think that kind of makes guys think that's exactly what they're going to do. And so my encouragement that I would want to say to many guys is what Paul says to Timothy in 2 Timothy 4, preach with great patience, being faithful to the text and loving people. But one of the things I wish someone would said to me is like, hey, I know these things you have and visions and all those things, but realize it's going to take some time to get there and be patient with people, loving with people. And I was patient with people and loving, but internally I was frustrated. Like, man, Lord, when is this ever going to happen? Like, when's the tables going to turn here? I'm going to get in the right direction. So I came across this illustration a long time ago, and I don't know who said it, so I can't give credit to whoever it is, but it says you can't turn a train around in a train yard. So you have to drop off certain carts. You have to go turn the engine around to be able to pull around and then pick up certain things. And you got to lead people well. And so one of the things I would love to tell young guys, and I do tell them, is learn to know what to say no to. I was saying yes to everything, every meeting, every phone call, every person. And so I was running hard, really hard. So I had meetings almost every night, and I was running hard every Sunday night. And so I wasn't living the principle of the Sabbath very well at all.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the greatest things I would tell guys is like, man, just time management is one of the things I wish I would learn. Counseling. I mean, I felt like I was really well equipped, especially sitting under Dr. Shaddix and really relearning how to study the text and exposition. I mean, I felt like I went to Lacombe well prepared for that, but I was not well prepared learning how to counsel people. So I think that, I had one counseling course in my seminary, my core, and so I felt like I really needed better counseling for that. One of my spiritual gifts is administration. So a lot of guys who don't have that can go to a church and they can really struggle with that. But I really wish I would have known just more of the bones in regards to just financial stewardship, church management software, just how, I think a lot of people divide administration from shepherding. And I think that if I could have had tools to understand that there are good church management software systems that's out there to help you bring both those together, then you can track people better. You can know where people are and just be able to know how to shepherd them in a long-term picture, like, hey, they're not here, they're small groups, and everything is kind of interconnected. And we had all these different systems, and it was just a mess. We were all over the place.
Well, really, that's an important point for us at GraceLed. Like, we don't want to offer a service or say that, hey, this is something we can help churches with that's not going to help aid the aspect of shepherding that you're talking about. Really, that's your call to the church. And so that shouldn't be something that if you're going to dedicate your time to either learning this thing or using this thing, that's a big part of why something we hit on a lot is social media and church websites. They're not just meant to be a bulletin board. Like, how are you actually using this as a place to do ministry and not just promote ministry? Otherwise, put your time elsewhere. Like, man, you only have so much time during the day. Now, when you are thinking revitalization, you guys, obviously you're not in the place today, 21 years now, looking forward from where you started. Like, is it, I think some guys, when you preach patience to a leader, they take it as a general principle and that's the thing they remind themselves of whenever they get frustrated. Other guys might want to think, okay, what does patience look like? All right, I'm going to extend my on-ramp here a little bit and think a little bit more like, okay, timeline-wise, I'm still going to be organized. I'm still going to have goals, but I realize that, Rome wasn't built in a day either. I don't know if you lean one way more or the other, like to think, okay, if I'm going to start a revitalization work, and there's plenty of churches, even in our association, that are in need of revitalization work today, like, what are guys signing up for? Like, is this a certain time frame that they should be thinking of in their mind? I know every situation is different, but like, kind of what are benchmarks or things as guys are counting the cost that they should expect going into that kind of situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you need to look at the marker of 3 to 5 years before the people actually see you, not just as a preacher, but as a pastor, because it takes some time to realize you're not just going to be here and out. You're not just a one and done and you're moving on. So I think that that's a critical factor for people to understand. You can tell them you're a pastor, they may call you pastor, but when you've walked through things with people, then they realize, okay, this is not just a guy. When they see that you're outlasting the tenure maybe of the average guys, then they realize, okay, now maybe they'll buy into your vision more. I think second thing is I would help them to understand the analogy when Jesus talks about the shepherd. There's two different types of shepherd in society back in that day in the agrarian. There was those who drove the sheep, and there was those who led the sheep. When Jesus uses the word shepherd, he talks about one who led them. So that's what I would encourage guys to realize. You're signing up for these people who may not want to follow you initially. So you just have to earn their trust, love them. Thirdly, I think that they have to understand that you do a lot of your leading through preaching, but preaching is not the only thing in where you're going to be able to revitalize this church. That's one piece.
Right.
So I think that there are certain bones that I have kind of in my mind that if someone needs to revitalize a church, like here are certain things that you need to be able to have in place in order to be able to help you get healthy started. What's that going to look like as far as developing your leaders? Do you have good church management software systems? Do you have a structure for discipleship? Do you have people to be able to help you lead worship? There's certain factors, and there's a lot more than that. But I think that a lot of guys go in think they're the one piece, and there's so many other factors that they really need. They need help. They need support. They need to realize I need a network of people who's going to come in and maybe even bring in other people to help equip and train some of their leaders, and realize they just need to lean on their strengths and also lean on others where they're weak to help them to get that church healthy and strong.
Is there, I can think of that. So with church planning, especially within our denomination, the North American Mission Board, you go through assessments. They're looking at particular unique skill sets and character traits that are, good to have in general for leadership, but might be a little bit more specific or need to rise to the surface with the kind of work that church planning requires. From a revitalization standpoint, can you think of, are there any skills or particular, the way you're wired personality wise, that you'd say like that this is important or helpful in going through and persevering through the work of revitalization?
I think one, you need to have a calling for that. I think that's really cool, very clear. That's necessary. I think that someone needs to understand that contrary to church planting is where, like even as you're working in developing a core, you bring in people who understand your vision from the very beginning. Revitalization is you're inheriting people who may have a different vision, and you've got to bring them along to now understand your vision. So there's this on-ramping process that's different with revitalization than is church planting. So I think revitalization actually can take longer than church planting because you're taking people and you're trying to help them understand a different mindset and a different vision. So I think that one of the key components for someone to say, I want to revitalize a church is, well, do you feel called to this? Number two, are you willing to go the long haul? Because, in church planting, there's different types of models. Some who feel like they get it started and they hand it off. Yeah. Or there's others who plant to say, I'm going to stay here long term. With revitalization, I think they have to realize is, okay, this may take a long time to get to church to be healthy before you can actually then make an impact on other people and other churches. So, for example, early on, probably I was there maybe 3 years. So when 2004, Katrina happened 2005, that was a radical change for our church. Actually was for the good for us because it helped us really revamp certain things that we really needed to do so. And it forced us to grow together. It helped us to be missional. So it was hard, but it was really good for us. Then in 2007, we tried to sponsor a church plant. We helped sponsor a church plant, and the association came to us, and we were willing to do so. We just didn't have the people or the resources to really pour into them. But we did pour some resources to it, and I was just met with that guy, and but it didn't work. Unfortunately, that church plant didn't last. And so, looking back in hindsight, as I realized, although it was a vision and a heart for us to be able to help and develop other places, I realized we need to get healthier before we can actually help others. Yeah. And so some people say, well, it sounds like you're being selfish in that way. But reality, it's just real. It's no different. That I need to make certain that we have the ability so that we don't cause something to fail. Like we want it to be healthy.
Yeah. And I think it's important to clarify at that point, there is not like a place of arriving. We're like, hey, our church we're good. And so now we can be for others. But that's something that's made with prayer. That's something, especially when you have a gift of administration, you're thinking through what are those benchmarks that we need to hit. So that way we do have a place of health.
Right.
I've struggled with, even with that, one of the lines often used in our denomination with church planting is that when church plants don't plant a church in the first 5 years, then they're not going to. And some of that's hyperbole. I've found that's the most volatile time. That's the most sensitive time. Like when you're wanting your 5-year-old to do anything that can be responsible and multiply themselves in some kind of healthy way. That's not happening at that age. And every church is a different story, and everyone's going to take a bit different path and a different timeline. But your call to be a part of the bigger church does bear responsibility in where you're starting, right where he's placed you in your specific congregation first.
Correct. Well, I think that in regards to what we define as health, sometimes we get pigeonholed in thinking that health looks like this, meaning that, well, if I reproduce a church and I plant a church, then I'm healthy. Well, there are other factors that come into play. I mean, your location also makes a big difference. But is it not also healthy? Like maybe we didn't plant a church, but what about the families that we sent out to serve in the mission field? Is that not healthy? I mean, I think that's healthy. What about the number of students who've signed up to go on a local mission trip? Is that not healthy? I think that's healthy. I think we sometimes get very short-sighted due to our necessary biases of what we think is what health is. And I think also, too, is that to put ourselves on this particular strict time frame to say, I've got to be able to reproduce a church and plant a church or by year such and such. I think it's maybe that we can rephrase that, say it's a goal, but to say we need to do it by such and such time, maybe limiting in regards to, and actually restricting to that church to feel the pressure rather than saying, okay, we're going to, there's a goal, there's a vision, but we need to be healthy before we can actually be able to really help pour into another location.
I mean, how many churches had to walk back publicly their 2020 vision, whatever that was called, right as COVID's hitting, because, hey, the Lord's leading us in this direction, and it's something that's going to be defined numerically. And yet this year, that's actually not what faithfulness looks like, is serving a lot differently than what we expected.
Yeah.
And so as we're thinking about each of those things are going to be specific to our church, but also they impact people in ministries outside of the church. You spoke to the association a little bit. You've spoken to the role of mentors in your life. What does that look like for you now, further along in ministry? And Dr. Shaddix is no longer with us as well now too. What's that look like for you to now think of how you can be serving and investing in other leaders yourself?
It's a great question, and it really kind of becomes played out in a couple of different ways in my life. And again, some of this happens organically, some is intentionally and strategically. One of the things that I pray is I never want to walk ahead of the Lord. I don't want to drag my feet. I want to walk hand in hand with Him. So some of those things the Lord has to bring about as well.
Yep.
But I was very fortunate and blessed to have Dr. Jim Shaddix as my mentor, and being able to have a core guys to be poured into by him and see that model, how it looks. So I have replicated that in two ways. One is internally with guys within my church, and now broader in regards to other maybe younger pastors that I'm trying to just pour into. So I have always a core of guys within my church that I'm trying to mentor, to raise up, to equip them to be leaders, and that looks different. I'm not necessarily raising up pastors and church planters, but I'm raising them up as deacons and elders. But some of them have been raised up, and I have sent out guys, equipping them as pastors. I mean, I have one guy that I mentored. He's now in Seattle. Another guy that I have equipped, he's now pastoring in Alabama. So actually a couple of the guys that I mentored are now on my staff. And so they were just believers in the church, raised them up, equipped them, mentored them, and now seeing them become on staff. And I think it's a beautiful thing that way. Cool, man. Yeah. Because they understand the heart of the church, they understand the vision. And I'm not opposed to bringing someone in from the outside, but we were light years ahead because they were a part of our church and they understood. Right. So when we moved them on to a staff position, I didn't have to help them understand the vision. I didn't have to help them buy in. So that's the way it's like practically. So even like right now, I have 8 guys that I'm mentoring right now. And I just rotated off a couple of them because now they're starting their own groups. And so that's there. So within our association, our heart's desire as a church long-term is that, because as you mentioned earlier, there are many churches in our association that are struggling, that really need revitalization effort. And so again, this is one of those things that God will have to bring about, is that our heart's desire is to pour into other churches, and the number, how we can handle them, we're just praying through that as well. Like I want to be able to pour into them. So I have some loose kind of mentoring that I am doing right now. One young guy that's in our association, he's in our association about 3 years. And so I meet with him a couple of times, a few times a year, just to meet and just encourage him, see how he's doing. But then we do have a church in our association that I meet with the pastor once a month, just because it was a rebrand or a replan. And so I'm just trying to help meet with them. And so our church actually has poured into some resources. So it's not official in regards to like, hey, we're adopting you. And so we're going to rebrand you. But our church actually has kind of made a partnership. So we're in like year 3 with them. It's an early start to what I long to see our church become. And knowing too, been in the association for this 21 years, it's unfortunate that some of the churches that really need it don't want it. They don't want the help because many of them might be stuck in their particular way, and they don't want to have someone coming in and trying to help them. So they feel like it's very territorial for them as opposed to wanting to be healthy and just trying to help them to understand certain things. So my goal is to hopefully just through some of the people that I'm pouring into now, these other churches that may hear and learn of those things, whether that's us or some other church, I just want to see the church thrive and see people rescued into God's kingdom.
And I think there's always a concern with outside voices of what the agenda is, or can I trust them, or do they care about me, and what are they actually trying to change? And like, there's any number of questions that can come up that can speak into our motivations of why we just kind of, one of the most helpful books I've ever read was not a Christian book. It was written by two Harvard professors called Thanks for the Feedback, The Art of Receiving Feedback Well. The book was not about how to give feedback. It was just on how to actually hear it and hear and glean from what something you might even disagree with, but to actually hear what somebody's saying. And I think pastors could be well served by
Very much so.
by learning how to process, especially from their congregation, but also people that are trying, well-meaning to pour into their lives. Now, I know you're doing that relationally with some guys specifically. You're also doing that in a broader sense, one of the ways through the Remind Conference. So tell me a little bit about Remind. How did this conference come to be, and what are you doing with it?
So this is our third year, and so very thankful for the Remind Conference. It was just a heart of mine that God just stirred within me for several years, and so we just kind of sat on it and prayed on it for a long time. I shared with the staff and just prayed about it, and so the intent of it was I wanted to be able to see a conference in our region that had quality speakers that guys could go to, that they wouldn't have to drive a long way or pay a lot of money to be able to go to. And so didn't understand resources, how that was going to happen, because unfortunately a lot of the conferences, as you know, that you go to them, I mean, you're having to pay quite a bit of money to get to the conference, and then you got to pay for hotels, and then you got to pay for flights if you're going somewhere.
But you trick yourself and say, like, I'm getting free books. I spent
Right.
$600 to travel here, but I'm going to get a couple free books.
Yeah, and I not to diminish, there's some great conferences out there, but I just know that the average pastor may not be able to afford to do that.
Right.
And so I wanted to be able to create a regional conference in this area that would have high quality so guys could go. I want them to be encouraged. I want them to be refreshed. I want them to be invigorated again to go back. And so we called it Remind because it's built out of John 21, where Jesus is challenging Peter when Peter is being reinstated, and feed the sheep, shepherd the sheep, and follow me. Those are the three commands that Jesus gave him. And so that's what we feel like every year we want to remind guys, hey, your job as a pastor is you need to feed them. So that's built on exposition. So we bring in someone who can model that, and sometimes we actually have breakout sessions that talk about exposition, how to do that. Second, shepherd the sheep, just knowing that that's the pastoral component in regards to how do you shepherd the sheep? Why do you shepherd the sheep? What's the practical ways to do that? And then following him. So we really want to challenge guys to make certain that your ministry is only going to be as good as your personal time in your walk with Jesus. And so that's really what we felt like we really needed to do that, because oftentimes we're going to conferences and there's great preaching, but oftentimes I don't see the component of like reminding them to say, hey, your walk, how can we talk about these things, and challenging them and encouraging them with their prayer life. And so we build in prayer times even within our conference as well, just for guys to be prayed for, pray for one another. And so that's kind of our heart. And so I shared that about 4 years ago with our church, and I just said, here's the vision. I want to see if our church is willing to support that. And so our church, my church, graciously agreed to that, because they see that's one of our missions of our threefold mission is delighting in God, declaring Jesus, and discipling all people. And so our church, my church, really felt like that it was a way by which we can disciple pastors and for the bigger church. If other churches can be healthy, then it's a win for the kingdom. And so that was kind of the heartbeat. And so I'm grateful the church I pastor has sponsored quite a bit financially so that guys don't have to pay a whole lot to be able to come to the conference. And then we partner with other vendors like GraceLed as well that's going to partner with it to help offset some of the costs. So I don't know too many conferences you can go to bring in a quality speaker that pays $45 to be able to go to the conference, to be able to experience that and get encouragement. So that's a little bit of the background of why we started the Remind Conference.
So this is year 3.
It is.
For how have you seen God use it so far? I haven't had a chance to go. This will be my first year attending and being a part of it. I'm glad that GraceLed can be a sponsor for it. How have you seen God use it these first few years?
Man, just been really grateful for how God has used it, just in regards to not knowing how guys are going to respond. So I would say a large percentage of even the guys that are coming this year are just repeat guys that they came back and they said, man, we were just so encouraged. And I had a couple of guys said, man, please don't let this grow. We want to keep it intimate like it is. And they said, but we know it's going to grow just because of what they experienced. So that and its immediate feedback has been good, just to see some of those guys, hearing some of them say, man, I'm out there by myself. So it was, secondly, I think what's been beneficial is seeing some of those guys now in year 3, they're building friendships within these guys. And so that's been beneficial. A third thing I've seen God do is I did not want this conference to be one denominational focused. I wanted to reach different denominations because it's for the church, it's for the kingdom. And so that's been a blessing to see guys from different denominations come to the conference as well. And then seeing these guys build relationships. So I'm grateful. That's just some of the ways I've seen God use the conference.
This year, I guess a little bit about this year. Then who's speaking at it? What's going? Because this is right around the corner. By the way, we'll put all this in the notes. But you're looking August 11th and 12th. So just a couple weeks out from when we're recording this.
Yeah.
You can still register, remindconference.org. We'll put that at the very top of our show notes. But share with us a little bit about what this year is going to be.
Yeah. Dr. Matt Carter is going to be coming. Dr. Matt Carter presently is serving with North American Mission Board, Vice President Mobilization. But he was a planter and stayed at Austin Stone Community Church for over 20 years. And then he went to Sagemont just for a very short time, then retired from that and stepped in with North American Mission Board. So I'm super grateful that he is coming because his ministry model was expositional preaching. That was kind of his heartbeat for when he started Austin Stone. And a little story about that. I mean, Austin is kind of a very liberal town. And so that was his heartbeat. He wanted to start with that, and God used that. God grew that. And so I wanted him to be able to come as an example and a model of longevity, an exposition for guys who can realize, okay, here's someone who's not just telling me about exposition. Here's not someone just telling me about pastoring long-term. Here's someone who did it.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that he's going to be able to come. And so he's going to be able to speak about that experience as well. So he's coming to do that. And so then, then we have breakout sessions as well that we try to provide some very practical opportunities for guys as well to be encouraged through preaching and worship and prayer and then fellowshipping with other guys. But then we want them to walk away with some very practical tools.
Yeah.
So one of the new things that we're doing at the conference, it's actually going out this week, is that of the different breakout sessions that we're doing, I'm going to do a breakout session that I'm taking just 8 guys. It's going to be the first 8 guys that register for that. And that is those guys who need to learn the steps from taking the text, understand the text, and walking that through so that after those 3 breakout sessions, they can learn the principles of how to put together an expositional sermon. They'll see it modeled, but a lot of times guys walk away like, well, how do you get
That's
to
good.
that
How do you
spot?
get there? Yep.
So that's something new that we're going to do this year.
That's awesome. And I appreciate the invitation to be able to speak at one of those breakout sessions as well too. Share some of the information from our newest book with Meet Them Where They Are and how some of these tools that we talked about earlier can be used for ministry and to help guys. There's a lot of content that is always encouraging, and the practical stuff is equipping. Times of worship and prayer with other brothers is refreshing. I'm a big proponent of just getting pastors together in a room and seeing what happens. And I've seen partnerships. I've seen ministry opportunities. I've seen just like guys that needed community personally and come to a place. You don't know what situation everybody's coming to that place needing to be reminded of something, and simply just being around other guys. We let the Lord do what he will over these couple of days. Anything else about the conference? Anywhere you like, kind of what's your prayer over the next several years? I know you're, as we're being patient, that some things also do grow, and healthy things often grow. And is there any hope for seeing that shift or expand, or kind of, where are you hoping to see Remind grow in the future?
Well, I do hope that it will grow in the aspect just for not to say, hey, we reached X number of guys,
right.
But longing for guys in our region to just learn about it so they can be encouraged and refreshed, so that they realize they don't have to be alone, that they can build networks. I mean, we have guys that's coming from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. And so we hope that as those guys come, that as they learn about the guys that's in their area, that if they don't have a network, that they can create just whether it's friendship, not necessarily an official network, but just community, that they can be to be refreshed and be encouraged. So that's what I hope for along that happens. And then secondly, in the future, we're actually going to be launching Remind Roundtables. So at this conference, we'll be announcing that. So that's going to happen just a couple of times in the year. And those are just to be able to keep some guys just together and try to give them some practical equipping. After this, from August to August, we'll do it just maybe 2 or 3 times at the most, because we don't want to busy people's lives. Sure. Because we know guys are busy and people have different networks. And so we're not just trying to create just another thing for guys. We want to make sure it's going to be beneficial for their lives. So if they say, hey, we'll watch online or we'll come and give you an hour and a half, I want it to be of value for them, that they walk away and they feel like, okay, I've been encouraged, I've been fed, I've been equipped. So that's one of the goals that we hope to stretch and reach. And
so the Remind Conference, August 11th and 12th, it's coming up. Registration's still open. remindconference.org. For everybody that, do people sign up for breakout sessions when they register, or is that they choose what to go whenever they're there? What's that process like?
So they sign up for the conference first, and then next week, not this week, but 2 weeks leading up to it, then they'll get a link in regards to the different breakout sessions, and they can pick.
Gotcha.
So we'll have 3 breakout times that they'll be able to then pick, okay, I want this one at breakout 1, breakout 2. So really, they'll have an opportunity to see that. And if they register late, then we'll just say, hey, this one is full this time. Open. So they'll be aware. So in addition to yours, I'm super grateful you guys are going to be coming and sharing, because a lot of guys don't know a whole lot about social media. And so I'm grateful you guys are going to come and help them. A lot of guys think that their Facebook page is glorious and wonderful, and that's the only way to communicate with people. So I'm grateful you guys are going to come and help them learn. So another breakout session we have is going to be on the shepherding component. We use a company called Biblicare to help track and shepherd people through counseling. So we're going to help guys if they don't know how to track and equip, and because with counseling, there's a lot of legal issues now. Yeah. And so that's going to be one of our breakout sessions, also helping people navigate those particular things also. And then Lane Corley with Send Network is actually going to do a breakout session also on how can you be a sending and a multiplying church. And so that's kind of tied into what we're talking about is, what does that look like for a church? And I think that's where I'm really excited he's going to do that, because I want guys to realize maybe for them, it may just be taking one step of just maybe a financial contribution. Maybe it's not, they're not sending out people. Right. Maybe it's they are not healthy enough to actually sponsor church, but getting their church moving to understand it's beyond them. It's for the Big C Church, for the great kingdom. So that one's happening. And then I'm doing my breakout session on expositional preaching, and we have another one in the works right now.
See, that's awesome. And if you're unfamiliar with that process with Send Network, they have, I think, it's 4 or 5 stages, from cooperating churches to sponsoring churches to sending churches and multiplying churches. And I know Lane is going to do a great job of communicating that wherever you think what it's supposed to look like, wherever you are, there's a way that you can be part of the new work that God's doing, both locally, around the state, and around the world.
Absolutely.
And if Remind is part of not just connecting us, reminding us about the gospel and our need for our own lives, but also pointing out the way that we can be on mission together, then, praise God for that. Thankful to be a part of the conference. The quick plug for us, for anybody that is a part of our breakout session, if you take one of those slots, you'll get a copy of our free book also during the breakout session. Anything else on the conference, anything? I'd love for you to have you actually close us in prayer, praying for the conference, praying for those that are, to go back to, what most of our discussion was about. There's a lot of guys that, myself included, there's never a day when we don't need to be reminded of the gospel. And, but also guys that are struggling, feeling alone, that maybe just need that word today.
Yeah. So last thing I would just say is that, man, I think everybody's been in that spot. They've been in spots where it's been really good, and there's been spots where it's been tough, whether it's a hard conversation or whether the enemy is just throwing his darts at you. Yeah. So you need to be able just to live in the armor of God that he's given you. I know that a lot of guys, when guys are thinking about this, and I've talked to them, like, man, I don't know if I have time. We've designed the conference specifically for pastors who are busy. So we start Monday afternoon, and we go through Tuesday afternoon. So we did that so that guys could drive, like if they're coming from Monday morning, so they basically can stay one night. They don't have to rent a hotel 2 nights. So we tried to really be very strategic so that guys can come, not sacrificing a whole week just to be able to come have good community. And the last thing I would say to what you're saying is that one of the values of being at a conference is you get to build people and build relationships, is that we've intentionally in our schedule made some of our transition times a little longer so that guys can grab a cup of coffee and be able to sit down and have conversation, to be able to not just rush from this one to this one to this one.
Yeah, I normally have to skip a session to do that.
Yeah,
but it's not important that I do it. But
yeah, exactly. So that's why we have our lunchtime a little bit longer, because we want guys to be able to not feel rushed.
Yeah.
Because as a pastor, you're always feeling like there's always one more thing to do, one more conversation to have, one more phone call, one more email, one more text message. And we want guys just to be able to try to unplug just for a little bit. Yeah. Because my prayer is they will leave reminded that God has called them to where they are, their location. They know their people, so they can walk away being encouraged. Man, I do want to go back and feed my people well. I do want to go back and shepherd my people well. But man, I want to follow Jesus really well. Because if you do the first two and you're not following Jesus, you're going to get burnt out.
Yep.
So that's our heart's desire.
Amen. Thanks, Byron.
Yeah.
Can you pray for us?
Absolutely. Lord Jesus, you are King of all kings, and we praise your name. You are good. And so I pray, God, Jesus, that you would use this podcast to encourage guys as they listen. I pray that as they evaluate their own lives and their own walks, that they would realize they're not alone. First and foremost, because you promise us that we would never be alone, that you give us the power of the Holy Spirit to live in us, to always be with us. But God, I do pray that those guys who would listen to this podcast and who may share it with others, that if they're looking for a place where they can be encouraged, refreshed, and be reminded of the basic task that you gave Peter that now are extended to us, that you want us to feed the sheep because they're your sheep. You want us to shepherd the sheep because they're your sheep, but you want us to follow you. So Lord Jesus, I pray that you would use the Remind Conference this year to remind guys of these commands that you've given us. And I do pray that guys would be refreshed and some great relationships will form for the sake of encouragement with one another. Lord, our heart's desire is to see all these churches who will come be healthy, because if they're healthy, then we know that they're going to reach the lost in their particular neighborhood. So Lord, may you be glorified and magnified through it all. We bless your name. We pray this in the name that is above every name, King Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, man.